Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, we're going on a deep dive into the work of Teru Nakashima.
Um, who is he?
Right, so Teru Nakashima is this Japanese self-help author and counselor.
Okay.
And he's got some really interesting perspectives on things like intuition, self-acceptance, and just how our minds can shape our experience, really.
Yeah.
And we've got his writings to go off of and a few other notes. So,
Okay. Sounds good.
yeah.
Cool.
So, one of the things that I find really interesting about him is he doesn't fit into that typical self-help guru mold.
Yeah, he definitely brings something different to the table.
Yeah, and I think it's his nuance. He doesn't make it black and white.
Right.
He's not afraid to, challenge some of those, typical self-help tropes.
Exactly.
Like one example is with intuition, right?
Oh, yeah.
You'd think that a self-help guru would be all about trust your gut, follow your intuition.
Right.
But Nakashima actually says that's not always the best idea.
That's interesting.
Yeah, he says it's like a double-edged sword, right?
I can see that.
It can lead to some amazing opportunities, but I mean, it can also steer you totally wrong.
Right.
And so how do we tell the difference?
Yeah.
How do we know when to act and when to, maybe pause?
Yeah, I think it's a lot about being aware of your feelings.
Right.
And how those feelings might be influencing your perceptions.
Mm.
If you're feeling super stressed or angry, maybe that's not the best time to make a huge life decision solely based on your gut feeling at that moment.
Oh, for sure.
It's about taking a step back, assessing the situation,
Yeah.
and just seeing if your emotions are maybe clouding your judgment a little bit.
Yeah, that makes total sense. It's so easy to get caught up in the heat of the moment and just go with whatever your gut is saying at that time.
Right.
And this actually ties into another one of Nakashima's ideas, which I thought was really interesting.
Okay, let's hear it.
And that is his idea of the true self. He doesn't buy into this idea that there's just one fixed true self.
So what's his take?
He actually proposes that we all have multiple authentic selves.
Oh, interesting.
Right. And that we actually show up differently depending on the situation that we're in.
Right.
Think about how you act around your closest friends versus at a work meeting.
Oh, totally different. Yeah, totally different.
We're playing different roles, but each role is still genuinely a part of us.
Absolutely. Psychologists actually have a name for this. It's called personas, I believe.
Right.
And Nakashima encourages us to kind of embrace this adaptability.
That's a really cool idea because it takes the pressure off, right?
It does.
We don't have to be the same person all the time. We can adapt to the situation and the people we're with.
Exactly.
Okay. Another thing that really stood out to me was his approach to, how we deal with past failures.
Yeah.
And he has this idea of rewriting the failure script, he calls it.
Okay, tell me more.
So basically what he says is that, dwelling on past failures doesn't do us any good.
Right.
All it does is reinforce this negative self-image, right?
Okay.
So what he suggests is that we actually actively visualize success in those situations.
So we're replacing that memory of messing up with a vision of how we could have done things differently.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's actually a technique that's used a lot in sports psychology. And the idea is that, by visualizing that positive outcome over and over again, we can actually shift our emotional response to that past event.
I see.
So we're not denying the failure, but we're changing how it affects us.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's like giving yourself a second chance, but in your mind.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. It seems like a lot of Nakashima's work is about challenging those negative self-beliefs that we tend to hold on to, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So this leads into another key concept of his, which is radical self-acceptance.
Okay. I'm intrigued. What does he mean by radical self-acceptance?
So for him, it means saying okay to all parts of ourselves, even the ones that we don't like.
Even the ones we don't like.
And he makes this distinction between liking something and accepting something. Right? We don't have to force ourselves to our negative traits, but we can simply acknowledge them and accept that they're there.
Right, right.
So it's not about trying to get rid of those parts of ourselves that we don't like. It's more about just recognizing that they're there and that they're a part of who we are.
It's about making peace with them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's a really important distinction because I think a lot of our self-criticism comes from trying to deny or suppress those parts of ourselves that we don't like.
For sure.
And that just creates more inner conflict.
Right.
So it's about bringing in self-compassion and recognizing that, we're all a mix of light and shadow. We've got good parts and we've got, parts that we might not be so proud of.
It's about being a whole person.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that.
Now, one thing I'm curious about is his take on, setting goals for success. Like, does he have any specific advice on how to go about that?
He does. He actually lays out a 7-step framework.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's pretty practical, really well structured.
Okay, I'm ready. Lay it on me.
Okay, so step 1 is to clarify your purpose. So really thinking about, like, what is it that you want to achieve and why is this important to you?
So starting with the why.
Exactly. And then step 2 is to, set some specific goals that align with that purpose. So this means, like, getting really detailed, including dates, numbers, really specific actions that you're going to take.
So making them really tangible.
Yes, exactly. Then step 3 is monitoring your progress. So this is about regularly checking in with yourself, like, where are you at in relation to your goals?
So what's next?
Step 4 is analyzing the current situation. So this is about, like, taking stock of what's working, what's not working, what needs to change.
Okay, so you're kind of figuring out where you are on the map.
Exactly.
Okay.
Then step 5 is developing a plan based on that analysis. So this is where you break down those goals into smaller, more manageable steps.
Creating the roadmap.
Yes.
Okay.
And then step 6 is seeking support. So, identifying your strengths and your weaknesses and reaching out to people who can help you in those areas where you need it.
Because we don't have to go it alone, right?
Right.
We can get help from others.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then finally, step 7 is reflection. So this is after you've achieved a goal, taking some time to actually review the process. What did you learn? What would you do differently next time?
So it's like a continuous cycle of learning.
It is.
And improving.
Exactly. And, it's interesting because this framework actually mirrors a lot of the project management and personal development strategies that are used in other fields. It's really about self-awareness, planning, building a support system, all of that.
I see.
Yeah.
So now another point that I wanted to touch on was Nakashima's view on confidence.
Okay.
Or maybe more accurately, the lack of confidence, right?
Okay.
So he actually says that waiting to feel confident before taking action is a mistake. Like a lot of people wait until they feel confident before they do something, but he's saying, that's not the way to go.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what does he suggest?
He's basically saying that confidence often comes after we start taking action, not before.
I see. So it's not about waiting for the confidence to show up. It's about just doing it anyway.
Yeah. And it can be scary,
Right.
Because you're kind of taking a leap of faith.
It's like that saying, fake it till you make it.
Right.
Sometimes you just have to, like, jump in.
Yeah, exactly.
And just see what happens.
Exactly.
Your confidence will come.
Yeah, and it makes me think of the concept of imposter syndrome, which, it's that feeling of not being good enough. And, a lot of people who experience imposter syndrome, they kind of hold themselves back because they're waiting to feel confident enough.
Right.
But what Nakashima is saying is that action is the antidote to that.
So by taking action, we actually start to see that we are capable. And that builds our confidence in a way that just waiting and hoping never could.
Yeah. And it's kind of like we have to prove it to ourselves.
Exactly.
We have to take that first step.
Sometimes that's the only way to do it.
Yeah.
Just to start.
Yeah.
Even if it's messy.
That's a powerful message, I think, for anyone who's struggling with self-doubt.
It is. It's about shifting our focus from waiting for the perfect conditions to just taking that first step.
Right.
Even if it's imperfect.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Nakashima points out that even when we achieve something great, it's rarely a solo effort.
Yeah, he makes a good point about that. Like, even individual achievements, they're usually built on, like, this foundation of support from other people.
Right. He reminds us to consider all the people who contribute to our success, It could be family, friends, mentors, or even just the people who created the systems we depend on, like, without even realizing it.
It's so true. I think it's really easy to get caught up in your own bubble, your own efforts, and forget about all of those other contributions.
It really is. And he encourages us to cultivate gratitude for all those, like, unseen hands that help us along the way. It's about recognizing that whole network of support that helps us reach our goals.
That reminds me of what we were talking about earlier, his ideas about collaboration and mentorship, like how we can accomplish so much more when we work together and support each other.
Absolutely. He's really emphasizing that interconnectedness, that web of support. and encouraging us to celebrate the contributions of others.
It's a good reminder that we're not in this alone.
We're not. And you know what? This idea of interconnectedness actually leads nicely into another one of Nakashima's big themes, the concept of inherent worth.
Oh yeah, he talks about that a lot, like how everyone has value just by being themselves, regardless of their achievements or external validation.
Exactly. And he actually draws on the philosophy of Ralph Waldo Emerson, who had this beautiful idea that each person has a unique and valuable contribution to offer the world.
I love that. And to help us tap into that belief, Nakashima offers some really practical tips for cultivating a sense of inherent worth.
He does. He suggests 4 key things. Okay, first, don't let the opinions of others dictate your worth. Second, express your own opinions freely. Don't be afraid to speak your mind. Third, recognize your own unique abilities and talents. And finally, remember that you already have the capacity to be recognized and appreciated by others.
This is like own your strengths, find your voice, and don't rely on outside sources to tell you what you're worth.
Exactly. It's about shifting that focus from external approval to internal acceptance and self-belief.
That shift sounds so important, but it also sounds incredibly challenging, especially in a world where we're constantly bombarded with messages that measure our worth by external achievements and comparisons.
It definitely is a challenge. But Nakashima reminds us that true worth comes from within. It's about recognizing the inherent value of who you are, not what you do or what others think about you.
It almost feels like we have to reprogram our brains to focus on our inherent worth rather than seeking that external validation we're so used to.
That's a great way to put it. And it's an ongoing practice. It's about making that conscious choice to believe in yourself, even when you're surrounded by messages that might contradict that belief.
It's like building a muscle, isn't it? The more we practice believing in ourselves, the stronger that belief becomes.
Love that analogy. And this idea of trusting in yourself leads perfectly into another one of Nakashima's fascinating concepts, the idea that the universe has your back.
Okay, I've been wondering about that one. What does he mean by the universe has your back?
Yeah. Well, he suggests that when we commit to our goals and take action, the universe kind of conspires to support us. He believes that opportunities will appear, resources will become available, even seemingly random encounters will happen, all to help us along the way.
So it's like the universe is secretly working behind the scenes to help us achieve our dreams.
That's the idea. And to illustrate this concept, he shares a personal story about a CEO who consistently visited him during a period when Nakashima was withdrawn from society for about 10 years.
Wow, that's amazing.
Right. And what's remarkable is that this CEO's visits, which might seem like small actions, had a huge impact on Nakashima. It speaks to this idea that when we put ourselves out there and pursue our goals, support can arrive in the most unexpected ways.
It's like there's this invisible web of connections and synchronicity, and we can tap into it if we're open to it.
Precisely. And Nakashima's idea about the universe having our back actually aligns with some other interesting concepts you might have heard of, like synchronicity, the law of attraction, or the power of intention.
I've always been intrigued by those ideas. They can seem a bit mystical, but there's something undeniably compelling about the notion that our energy and actions can actually influence the world around us.
I agree. It's about trusting that when you take that first step towards your goal, the universe will meet you halfway.
It's such an empowering thought.
It is. And it brings us to Nakashima's final point in his writings, the power of affirmations.
Oh yeah, he's a big advocate for those, right? He specifically recommends using the phrase "dekichata," which I believe means I did it.
Exactly. And what's interesting is he suggests using it in the present perfect tense.
Why the present perfect tense?
Well, he explains that using that tense reinforces a sense of accomplishment, even if you're still working towards the goal. It strengthens self-belief by affirming that you've already achieved what you set out to do.
So it's like a way to reprogram your thinking, to believe in your own success, even before you've fully reached the finish line.
Exactly. It's about reinforcing that belief. You are capable of achieving your goals.
It seems like such a powerful tool for shifting your mindset.
It really is. And you know what? Using affirmations actually aligns with the other techniques we've been talking about, like visualization and positive self-talk. It's all about using the power of your mind to shape your reality.
So are there other examples of affirmations that people use or specific ways to integrate them into daily life?
Absolutely. You can find tons of resources online and in books with affirmations for all sorts of goals, like building confidence, cultivating self-love, attracting success, anything you can think of.
So the key is to find affirmations that really speak to you personally and then make a habit of repeating them consistently.
Exactly. It's about making it a regular practice, almost like a mental workout.
Well, we've really gone deep on this one.
We have, haven't we? I mean, this has been a really fascinating deep dive into Nakashima's work.
Yeah.
Like, from intuition, self-acceptance, even like the idea of the universe, kind of having our backs.
Yeah. It's pretty mind-blowing stuff, actually.
It is, yeah. And as I've, been kind of reflecting on everything we've talked about, it's interesting because I'm struck by how Nakashima's approach, it's not really about achieving like this external definition of success,
Right.
It's about something more, it's about like cultivating self-awareness, embracing all parts of yourself.
Right.
And recognizing your connection to the world around you.
Yeah, it feels so much more holistic than like the typical self-help advice you hear.
Absolutely. He's encouraging us to live more intentionally, to be authentic, to be genuine, and to trust that like we have this power within us to create the life that we really want.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Nakashima's ideas, what stands out to you as like maybe the most powerful or maybe even the most unexpected concept that, we could really apply to our own lives?
I think looking back over everything we've talked about, the thing that really resonates with me is his emphasis on action. It's not just about thinking positive thoughts or embracing self-acceptance, like in theory, right?
Right.
It's about like actually putting those ideas into practice, like in the real world,
Yeah. He's all about taking action, even if it's just a small step, and trusting that things will unfold from there.
Exactly. And I think that's such an important message, for anyone who's like feeling stuck or, unsure of where to start. Like, you don't have to wait for the perfect moment or the perfect feeling to get started. You can literally start creating the life you want right now, in this very moment.
It's about taking ownership and making choices that align with our values and our goals, not waiting for permission or validation from, outside sources.
Yes, exactly. I love that. And, Nakashima actually provides us with such a practical framework for doing just that,
As you were talking about that, I was thinking back to his idea about, the universe having our backs.
Yeah.
And I was thinking like, what if sometimes that support, what if it comes in the form of challenges? What if, like, the obstacles that we face, what if they're actually opportunities for growth and learning, just kind of, like, disguised in a different form?
Oh, that is such a brilliant question. That's such a great point. It's all about shifting our perspective on challenges, isn't it?
Right.
Like, instead of viewing setbacks as failures, what if we could actually see them as chances to test our resilience,
Yeah.
develop new skills, and ultimately become stronger versions of ourselves.
Honestly, that's something I've always struggled with. I tend to view setbacks as, failures.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to reframe that in my mind.
Yeah.
How can we practically, like, shift our thinking, to see those obstacles as opportunities?
I think it takes practice, It's not easy. But I think a really good starting point is to, like, when you encounter a challenge, just pause for a moment and ask yourself two questions. Like, first of all, what can I learn from this experience, And second, how can this experience help me grow?
Yeah, those are really good questions to reflect on.
Yeah.
And it does feel like such a powerful shift in perspective to view challenges that way.
It is. It really is. And, that shift in perspective, I think it embodies the essence of Nakashima's work. It's about embracing the journey with all its like twists and turns, ups and downs, and trusting that we have the inner strength to navigate any obstacle that comes our way.
I love that. It's about trusting in yourself and trusting in the process, even when things get tough.
Absolutely.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive, what is one final thought or question you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Okay, here's something to think about. Nakashima talks a lot about how the universe supports us, when we commit to our goals.
Right.
But what if that support often comes in forms that we don't expect? Like forms that we might not immediately recognize as being helpful. What if those challenging moments, the ones that we like tend to resist or try to avoid, what if those are actually the universe's way of pushing us to grow, to expand beyond our comfort zones,
That's a really thought-provoking idea. It's almost like flipping the script on how we view challenges and setbacks.
Exactly. Like, what if those obstacles are actually exactly what we need to experience in order to reach our full potential?
Yeah. That is a really powerful shift in perspective. It's about trusting the journey and recognizing that, like, every experience, even the difficult ones, can serve a purpose in our growth.
Absolutely. And with that, we'll leave you to ponder that question and to continue your own exploration of self-affirmation and mindset.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the work of Teru Nakashima. Remember his words, Dekachata. You got this. Embrace those challenges. Trust your intuition, and keep taking those powerful steps towards the life that you envision.